So I got this from this online site, Bible Project, and they have a lot of, and Jane knows this, but there's a lot of little videos, short videos of different books of the Bible, and they kind of do a little, just like this, and a little synopsis of that book. So I found that real helpful.
The book of Proverbs. The word proverb typically refers to a short, clever saying that offers some kind of wisdom, and this book has a lot of those. But they're almost all in the center section of the book, chapters 10 to 29. But there is way more going on in the book of Proverbs, especially at the beginning, chapters 1 through 9, and the conclusion, chapters 30 and 31. The book's been designed with an introduction, chapter 1, verses 1 through 9, and it first of all links this book to King Solomon. Now remember the story in 1 Kings chapter 3. Solomon had asked God for wisdom to lead Israel well. And so Solomon became known as the wisest man in the ancient world. And we're told in 1 Kings chapter 4 that he wrote thousands of proverbs and poems and collected knowledge about plants and animals. So Solomon was like the fountainhead of Israel's wisdom literature. So while not all the material in this book is written by him personally, he is where Israel's wisdom tradition began. The introduction says that by reading this book, you too can gain wisdom. Now, wisdom for most of us means knowledge, but the Hebrew word chokhmah means much more than just mental activity. It refers to action also. So think skill or applied knowledge. This is why back in the book of Exodus, chapter 31, it was artists and craftsmen in Israel who were said to have chokhmah. So the purpose of this book is to help you develop a set of practical skills for living well in God's world. And this gets linked with another key idea in the introduction, the fear of the Lord. Now, fear here is not about terror. It's about a healthy sense of reverence and awe for God and about my place in the universe. It's a moral mindset that recognizes I am not God and that I don't get to make up my own definitions of good and evil and right and wrong. Rather, I need to humble myself before God and embrace God's definition of right and wrong, even when that's inconvenient for me. Now, this introduction leads us into the first main section of the book, chapters 1 through 9, which also doesn't contain short one-liner proverbs. Rather, what we find here are 10 speeches from a father to a son about how the son should listen to wisdom and cultivate the fear of the Lord and live accordingly, which means a life of virtue and integrity and generosity, all of which lead to success and peace. And the father warns his son also about folly and evil and stupid decisions that will breed selfishness and pride, all leading to ruin and shame. And so the son should make the pursuit of wisdom and the fear of the Lord his highest goal in life. And this way of thinking, it forms the moral logic of this entire book. Now, these speeches from the father also clue us into what biblical wisdom literature is and how it's different from other parts of the Bible. These books explore how to live well in God's world, but wisdom is not the same as law, like what Moses gave Israel at Mount Sinai. And it's not the same as prophecy, divine speech to God's people. Rather, wisdom literature has the accumulated insight of God's people through the generations about how to live in a way that honors God and others. And so, through the book of Proverbs now, these human words about wisdom have been put together as God's word and wisdom to his people, which connects to the other thing you find in chapters 1 through 9. There are 4 poems from Lady Wisdom. Here, wisdom has been poetically personified as a woman who calls out to humanity to pay attention and to seek her. Wisdom says that she is woven into the fabric of the universe, and so wherever you see people making wise decisions, they are relying on her. So you see someone being generous or having sexual integrity or upholding justice. They are drawing on wisdom. These Lady Wisdom poems, they're a creative, poetic way of exploring this idea that we live in God's moral universe, and that goodness and justice are objective realities that we ignore to our own peril. And so fearing the Lord, living wisely, it's living along the grain of the universe. Now together, these two sets of speeches from the Father and Lady Wisdom, they make a powerful claim about this book, that you're not simply reading good advice, you're reading God's own invitation to learn wisdom from previous generations. And so in the next section of the book, chapters 10 through 29, we find hundreds of ancient proverbs, and they apply wisdom and the fear of the Lord to every life topic you could imagine: family, work, neighborhood, friendship, sex, marriage, money, anger, forgiveness, alcohol, debt, everything. And these are all filtered through the value system of Proverbs 1 through 9. Now, these Proverbs, they're all pretty short, they're easy to memorize, and actually this section of the book is meant to become a reference work that you return to time and time again throughout the years, which raises some important issues in learning how to read these Proverbs. First of all, Proverbs are by nature about probabilities. So you fear the Lord and you make wise, good choices, things will likely go well for you. And if you don't fear the Lord, you're foolish, your life will likely not go so well. Now, that is all often true, but not always. Which leads to the next point, that Proverbs are not promises. They're not formulas for success. So, some Proverbs, for example: the fear of the Lord prolongs your life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. Or, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't turn from it. So yes, fearing God, being a moral person, will most likely lead to a better, longer life, and raising your kids in a stable, loving home does set them up well, but there are no guarantees. Lots of things can and often do go wrong in our world. And so lastly, Proverbs by nature focus on the general rule, but not the exceptions, which are many. And the wisdom books actually aren't ignorant of that. The exceptions are what the other wisdom books, Job and Ecclesiastes, are all about. And together, these acknowledge that life is too complex for simple formulas, which is why we need all of the wisdom books together to get the bigger picture. This all leads to the final section of the book, two large collections of poems. First, poems from a man named Agur, who begins by acknowledging his own ignorance and folly and his great need for God's wisdom. And then Agur discovers that divine wisdom has been given to him in the scriptures, which teach him how to live well. And so Agur is put before us as like a model reader of the book of Proverbs, somebody who's always open to hearing God's wisdom through the scriptures. The final poems are connected to a man named Lemuel. He's a non-Israelite king, and he passes on the wisdom that was given to him by his mom. It's guidance for being a wise and just leader. And then the final poem is an acrostic or an alphabet poem where each line begins with a new letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the entire poem's about the woman of noble character. It depicts a woman who lives according to the wisdom of Proverbs and stands like a model of someone who takes God's wisdom and then translates it into practical decisions in everyday life, at work or at home, in her family and in her community. So the book opened with words from a father to a son about listening to Lady Wisdom, and so now the book closes by offering the words of a mother to her son about a woman who lives wisely. The book of Proverbs is for every person in every season of life. It's a guide for living wisely and well in God's good world. And that's what the book of Proverbs is all about.
So James handed out an outline. We're pretty much going to follow a lot of that. So, and this is a little bit of repetition of what the video said, but it begins with this verse, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So early church fathers thought Solomon wrote the whole thing. But when you read Proverbs 25:1, it mentions some men of Hezekiah. And so in there, it suggests that they've taken these proverbs and edited them. So most scholars today don't think that Solomon is, quote, the author. There are several collections. Some of them are ascribed to other authors than Solomon. And like the video said, there's somebody mentioned Agur, and I said Lemuel, but Lemuel, whichever, are attributed to those. So other authors besides Solomon. He probably contributed the majority, but not all. So Proverbs is kind of difficult to date because it's Proverbs. I mean, they're just little short sayings, and there really isn't anything they allude to historically of, this king or that king or this battle or some country taking over another, or any of those types of things. So they have a hard time doing that. But since if we believe that Solomon wrote it, well, he died in 983 BC, so it dates back to at least then, probably before. And then these scholars think that some of the older sayings could go back to the Bronze Age, which ended around 1200. So there's some older parts there, and they think the final editing of the book has been as late as 600, which is several hundred years after Solomon. And likewise, with the being a collection of proverbs or sayings, trying to figure out the setting is a little difficult also. So some scholars have said, well, it's in a rural setting. Others said it's the royal court of Solomon, home, or instruction of a teacher to a student. So, it starts off with this father to his son, so that would support home, or a mother to her son at the end, so that could be a home, or also be considered as instruction of a teacher. So there's just different ways to look at it, but because they're universal maxims, you can't really. Could you mute, please? Anyway, so coming up with a setting of where the sayings were developed is, and if there's more than one author, that makes it even more difficult. The beginning of Proverbs states its purpose, and I'm not going to read that whole one. You can look at it. I'm just going to say down there at the bottom, it summarizes it. Know wisdom, understand wisdom sayings, subscribe to moral insights, and move towards maturity. Those are all in that verse above from Proverbs, and that's more or less what the guy on the video said. So
I don't know if it doesn't attribute any Proverbs to women. I was curious about that man. That little synopsis.
Oh yeah.
Did I understand that wrong? I thought the little cartoon guy was saying that some women might have written.
I didn't read that. I didn't hear that.
It was just about. Yeah.
There was the lady wisdom.
Yeah, that's
at the beginning, and there's the wise woman at the end in chapter 31.
That's the one I missed.
Plus, it said that one guy was taught by his mom.
Right, that was in the end of chapter 31.
Yeah, lady wisdom.
Well, and I think there's other books in the Bible that talk about wisdom as a feminine form.
Sophia. Yeah.
No, Sophia. Okay. The author of the Handbook, Estes, said it's Proverbs probably designed for young men of Israel to be instructed for positions of leadership. So Solomon had kind of centralized the government, which created the need for lots of administrators, taxes, census, whatever in the government. So they needed some people to occupy those positions. So he thinks this is some counsel to develop these leaders. Talking about the literature, I thought it's a catchy way of saying something, and you can remember it more easily that way. And he said on the video again, these are not fixed formulas. He talked about probabilities. And as we discussed in Job, it's not a guarantee things are going to go just perfectly for you if you follow all the laws and are a righteous person, you can still have a streak of bad luck, as Job testified. So,
And I do like that the wisdom books should be read together. Yeah, I thought that was important.
now I kind of, some of the Proverbs I think might be a little bit enigmatic. A lot of them are pretty straightforward. To me, it's like, do this and this will happen, or, don't do that. But so they've kind of created this last point says they're trying to discern order from the chaos of your life and extract patterns based on observation. So they've seen, if you do this, more likely than not, this will happen. There should be a good outcome if you follow the good advice of others, that type of thing. So Estes says, the book has all these sayings that are individual units. Most of them are really short, 1 or 2 sentences. Some go a little bit longer, but it's not a lot. So you have to interpret them individually, so it's his understanding or his belief. That's just the nature of a proverb. So here's the chapter headings in the book of Proverbs. Those are in the book. So
I like changing the wise and Forbes.
I know. In fact, when I was writing my outline, I'm like, why would we say 7? It's just Solomon 3 times. And so I consolidated it. I thought it was poor editing.
maybe that's one of those numerology things. 7's the magic number.
Yeah, actually, as a number of completion and mystery.
Yeah, that's what I mean. 7. Maybe that's why they made it have 7 headings. I don't know.
That's what the theme of
Proverbs.
the wise.
So they split it up.
I don't know, 1 and 2 are different. I just thought that was funny.
Well, maybe the first one was he wrote them when he was David's son before David died. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just taking a shot in the dark.
So there's other books in the Bible that make this comment. There's 2 paths: the good path, the path of wisdom, the evil path of folly. One leads to life, one leads to death. And that's in some other books where you'll find that comparison or contrast. So the wise teacher, tells you what's going to happen if you follow this path or if you follow the other path. So we're going to get into a few of these. We're not going to go. Jane's got them listed here. I think there was 12. Well, maybe she convinced. We're not going to go through all these, but I did pick out some of some topics. Well, I would she talks about, one of these. The whole book could, in a way, be said it's a parenting book because you've had the father to a son and the mother to her son at the, as bookends to the whole book. So you might say the whole thing is about a parenting instruction, but the one that I chose was cheerfulness. So here's some thoughts and Proverbs about. We'll actually get to a few of them here. So cultivating cheerfulness through good choices. That leads to joy by choosing to value what God's way. Friends make you glad. Prioritize friends over possessions. So this last one, it's not a passive response to just good conditions or the good things that happen to you, but your active personal choices that honor God. So
Have to be responsible.
it starts with the heart, not your situation necessarily, but with the heart. And that's kind of emphasized in Proverbs 15:13. A happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. So kind of showing an opposition to this parallelism here. So if you try to look cheerful in your, that isn't the same as joy, as 14:13 says. Even laughter, even if you're laughing, I think there's a song. I was thinking Linda Ronstadt had some song she sang about that. Even in laughter, the heart may ache and joy may end in grief. I think it tracks of my tears. I think she's saying has kind of a comment on that.
It does speak to that attitude is internal. You can't look to outside.
Okay, good point. And you can cheer somebody up with a good word, a kind word. And if you do it at the right time, that can make all the difference here. A man finds joy in giving an apt reply, and how good is a timely word? Does that ever happen to anybody here that just when you needed somebody to say something, somebody did, and it helped you through a tough situation?
On the other side of that,
Yeah,
as a
like-
school teacher, I remember occasions when parents would come in at some point during the year and say, when you said such and such to my son, it made all the difference. When did I say that?
Yeah, a lot of times we're not aware of the things that we say and do and how they affect somebody. Because sometimes it can take years before if you ever find out, before it becomes known to you that, you made a difference.
Yeah, I think Karen talked about being a coach.
And Steve talked about Jack Burlington. How many years ago did he influence your life?
It's too many to count. Probably 50.
Things like that just stick with you.
So Dennis, Proverbs 15:1. I was looking for my favorites. A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath.
Yeah.
Does that fit into the same category?
We'll get there.
Oh, it's a different one. I was trying to fit it in.
That was on a different point, but
Okay.
it kind of goes along. It's a timely word.
Yeah.
It's a timely word spoken to somebody.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to friendship. Some of this, there's overlap in a lot of these proverbs. One thing applies to another thing too. So, one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. I think I must have deleted. Oh, here it is. I'll try to get back to the right one. There's an old saying, you can choose your friends, but not your family. So Proverbs talks about maintaining friends, getting friends. You can also, that can be abused.
I love that. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house.
Right.
Too much of you. Sorry, guys. I'm glad to do that.
In the,
In another version, it says, your neighbor will grow weary of.
That's another one.
in the Didache, they talk about how to detect a false prophet, and they say if he stays more than 3 days, maybe they got that idea from there. So we choose our friends, and maybe we don't think about it, but our friends change us. So he who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm.
You can really see that in the people that your child chooses to associate with.
Sometimes if you run with the wrong crowd, gets you in big time trouble.
Yeah, my son is an only child. And when he was in junior high, he came from an elementary school that then went to a junior high that had a bunch of other schools that,
Yeah.
went there. And he saw some guys that he thought he wanted to be friends with. And I called him the king in his court because there was one guy that was the ringer of that group. And the others would just follow whatever he said.
Yeah.
These are junior high kids.
Yeah.
And so he never could get in, he couldn't break into that group because they didn't want any newcomers in the group. So he winds up with another group of guys. All those guys became doctors, lawyers. They have been his best friends, and better than a brother, whatever.
Yeah.
So he either went one way or the other, and he couldn't get into one, which was great. The others, which was perfect. So
Wow.
Good. Can you cultivate friendship?
Yeah,
Well, in Proverbs 17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is going to difficult. That's the cultivation that I have found. My brothers and sisters. I'm kind of like,
Does anyone have a favorite song about being a friend, having a friend, or needing a friend?
There's
Huh?
we're supposed to say it.
No, I just said, can you name it? If you want to sing a first person. Karen,
No, I'm not going to say, but not me.
lean on me.
there's one that the chorus is, you've got a friend. Can't think of the name of it.
Yeah.
Story.
You've Got a Friend in Me by Randy Newman.
No, not that.
Well,
one.
you're thinking James Taylor. You've Got
No,
a
it's
Friend.
I've got it on record for, it's not Janis Joplin, but it's one of the other lady singers from that.
Carole King.
Yeah, Carole King.
Yeah, she does. She and James Taylor both did it. So.
with a little help from my friend.
Yeah.
Joey
Okay.
Cocker.
Okay, get a little help from my friends, Beatles. Okay.
Denny and all the other funeral, unfortunately, several months back, and his friend Denny and beyond. But at their funeral, Denny had sung the diploma chorale, and the chorale was there, and they sang, "Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here." I think maybe that was used as theme song from Golden Girls.
Yeah.
I don't think it was written. And it was very appropriate for the. I was really glad that the planners chose.
Yeah, well, he had told the crowd one time, he said he'd like to have that sung at his funeral.
Oh, okay.
There's a musical called Beethoven's Last song. Anyway, in it, the
Symphony.
woman that wanted to be his companion sayings that, when everybody else is gone, I'll be there and I'll be your friend.
Is that the same with Garth Brooks? I got friends in.
That might be relying on the unreliable friends.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Well, there's another one. It's not really, it's about a brother, sort of, this is back in 60s or 70s. King in Heaven, he's my brother.
That
No,
was
righteous.
one I was thinking of.
Maybe.
That was one I was thinking of. I think it's related to Boys Town and helping one another
Yeah.
in tough times.
Point down, yeah.
makes me think of Girl Scout song On My Honor and how you work together to learn and grow. And if you're ever down, there'll be more people around. What's the tune, April? On my honor, I will try. There's a blues that I say.
I think the Hollies thing. Like, heavy
One
brother.
of my favorite hymns.
Always, okay.
One of my favorite hymns is Bear Each Other. There's one of Friends we have.
Yeah, I was thinking of that one.
Well, there's lots of songs.
I want to ask about that second bullet point. Do we really believe that means to avoid friends who might be bad influences? Or do we try to influence their lives?
Their mistakes and
Are all of the above?
All the above, there you go.
What do you think? All of the above?
I resist, the proverb basically says, stay away from people who are bad influences. Because if we all do that, we don't change other people's lives. I know that's probably one of the exceptions.
Yeah.
It's probably
Well,
covered in.
I know I had a friend at work that we were talking one day, and he had his daughter was going to college at that time. And along that lines, he told me that she insisted that her roommate be a Christian. And if she wasn't, she didn't want that person to be her roommate. And along that line, it's kind of like, so she was, I don't know, maybe she knew herself, maybe she knew that she needed that, but she's also missing an opportunity to witness somebody that to influence them. She's more worried about their influence on her than her influence on them. Sounds like I always kind of thought, I don't know, that kind of bothered me.
So if we're trying to be Christ-like, we would want to be able to see with wisdom into the lives and hearts of others and see what God sees. The love, and with the potential that's there, and extend Christ-like love to them. There may be people that it's harder to find that, but we have to be able to see the good in others, and again, this comes from being a teacher. You have to see the good in the lives of every single student, and try to bring it forth. But find ways to implement.
And then who did Jesus hang out with?
Well, that's what I was gonna just say.
Yeah, but I think the point that we sometimes miss is you can respect the person, love the person, show fellowship, but that doesn't mean you have to accept their behavior.
Right.
And that's what what I've noticed a lot of people don't get is oh, because you hang with that person, you're accepting their behavior. It's no, that's not what you're doing. You're trying to be a better person by going, okay, I might not agree with your lifestyle, your whatever, but I'm going to treat you as a human being because
Right.
that's what my faith is trying to treat you as how God's treated people who had leprosy or people who are accused.
Yeah, kind of like
Well,
Blake was saying,
yeah.
you want to recognize in that person, there is talking about the image of God in every person. Sometimes it's kind of tarnished and sometimes it's real bright, but
it's like just
recognize that.
because he hung out with people that were considered dregs of society didn't mean he approved of what they did. It's just he was trying to show, okay, you're a person, and every person, no matter their life path, needed to hear the gospel.
Okay.
Just because somebody professes to be a Christian doesn't necessarily mean that they're acting that
Okay.
way, especially when they go off to college for the first time and they get away from the influence of the parents and they're kind of in that searching realm.
Coral?
I was gonna say that the enduring principle of the workable person.
I think that's been, why not?
I do think there is wisdom, however, in disagreeing with Jonathan.
You're always.
I always say that. I think there is wisdom in the saying that if you're not careful, if you hang around those negative people too long, then it becomes a burden on you. You can't witness to them anymore because they're just getting you so far down. So I think there is some caution, there's some wisdom in saying, hang out with the people who are lifting you up. And then you can go back and you can maybe witness to the other people. Just limit your time. Maybe
It
it's that
takes
same-
a good self-esteem to handle and overcome a real negative person.
Well, and there are certain people in my life that I say one day, I don't see him for a little while. Get my energy back, go see him again one day. I think there is some wisdom in that to kind of pace yourself.
Exercising wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, what comes to mind is if you've ever been a parent or grandparent, there have probably been times you said to your kids, I love you, but I don't love your choices. And it's sort of the same thing.
Love the sinner, but not the sin.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to kindness. I've heard Karen say, why can't we just be kind? So don't repay evil for evil. And this is
Okay. Kindness.
and there's some different ways that is, I'm not sure which version that is. That came out of the handbook, he quoted it. The King James I think says a soft answer. So
Gentle.
I like that.
I was looking at when I do that.
I like that where it says, if he's hungry, give him food. If he's thirsty, give him water. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you.
what do you think that means?
He'll feel guilty for being bad.
It's kind of like kill them with kindness.
Okay.
Go against what they want you to do. Don't let them rally you up. Let them meet their anger with kindness and just be like, I know you're hungry. Here you go. And well, I don't want that.
I know it sounds vindictive.
It kind of is.
Well, didn't Amy Jill Levine talk about that Jesus was saying that too, the do unto others thing was really a little bit more of a trick. I remember her saying that.
Abraham Lincoln said the best way to destroy your enemies is make them your friends.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's good. I like that.
Well, and the peace and justice team, they did a thing, and when it says turn the other cheek, it's how they had to do it, and
Right.
That's it, yeah.
walk 1 mile, walk 2 miles
Yeah.
instead.
The Roman soldier,
Yeah.
walk an extra mile because that's going to confuse the guy who's going to I made you walk 1 mile and you're going to walk another mile.
Yeah.
It's going to be like,
That thing.
I was just gonna add on that first bullet, it's very dangerous to even mention the word politics in today's world.
Heading into the season, I thought that this guy
But
Took in my fantasy football team.
that's okay.
Let's see if the guy's a player or not. I got you.
Okay, anybody?
Yeah, so I think that's something we should aspire to in political discourse, is that we speak with each other with gentleness and not with harshness when we don't agree on the same on issues.
Yeah, that's, we have another meeting we've had, but it's, respect other opinions when you disagree.
Yeah.
Be tactful.
Be honest, but tactful. I like that.
Okay, so,
It's the meeting somebody, if they're yelling at you, it's not gonna help to yell back. It's talking gently to them.
yeah, there's this,
It's really hard when somebody's coming at you.
Sometimes it helps.
But it's not gonna do anything if you just keep yelling at them.
there's a saying that says, how does that go, Sharon, about don't, when you're in an argument, don't raise your voice.
Don't raise your voice and prove your argument.
Yeah,
You know, so when everyone is shouting, no one is listening.
That's true.
Yeah. And modeling listening. So that you can understand the story that's behind someone else's.
that's our fourth point there. Listen to others, seek first to understand.
And active listening where you're engaged, asking questions.
Curiosity,
and I think-
genuine wishing to understand.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of Carla Long. She says, lean into curiosity.
In my experience, especially the second one, it could apply to maybe the last one, but that was the 39th of Broadway, KCMO. And this homeless person was carrying on, cussing and whatever, and he looked like he was in distress, ragged and all that. I pointed to the Salvation Army and I said, sir, you can just ring the doorbell, they'll help you. And he cussed me out. Okay, he cussed me out. And so I'm I'm probably closer to the inner city than the rest of you. But you have to be very careful. Because I take the bus a lot and talking to people. You know, I've found that let them say something first, say hi. If they say something, then I can respond. But I find myself very reluctant anymore to even speak to anybody because a lot of them are on dope, you know. A lot of them are alcoholics or dope addicts. You have to be very careful.
Yeah, so that,
And in my physical condition, I have to be extra careful.
so that might be pretty instructive for you, Jim. Just a gentle answer turns away wrath. You might,
So you can't practice your Christian faith to try to help others. In doing so, sometimes you can harm yourself, and that's unfortunate in today's society.
But you had a gentle word. You were doing that.
Huh?
You gave him a gentle word. That was great.
for a soft answer.
And the probability was that maybe that would help, but not always.
No, and maybe he thought of it later. Oh, that man told me to go to the Salvation Army, and maybe he did.
Yeah,
Maybe it helped him.
And here's the ironic thing. The Salvation Army is selling their building to somewhere else. It's right next door to that stupid liquor store, Gomer's. And what they do is sell Satan sauce, tobacco. If you drink the Satan sauce, I guarantee you'll suffer loss. Anyway, the next door to the liquor store,
Jim came up with his own problem.
they move away.
Yeah.
That's the most excellent place for a Salvation Army at 39th and Broadway. And they're just a few steps west of the liquor store that's there on the corner.
Well, maybe
Now they're gone.
Maybe they can no longer afford the
I don't know.
upkeep of their building and they have no choice.
Yeah, okay, well, we won't solve that one, so, not today. Generosity. I thought this was interesting. He who oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker. So if you think of people as having the image of God in them, then if you treat them bad, you're showing contempt for God. And does this make you think of something Jesus said?
Do unto the least of you do unto me.
Okay. You do it unto them, you're doing unto Jesus. And then this last one kind of is think twice before you decide to do something. If you shut your ears to the cry of the poor, later on you find you need help and you cry out, you may not be answered either then.
That's the Peter and the Wolf syndrome.
Okay.
That story when I was a child scared me to death.
This is really heavy on my heart lately. And
Yes.
it is when you want to enable. And how do you draw that line?
I don't know. That's
And, when you go back to the Proverbs, it says just give.
yeah.
Well, as somebody who lived with somebody else's addiction, it is kind of hard to, you have to find other ways to give. Not necessarily by giving them money, but maybe by buying them groceries and instead of giving them money or, paying their rent. But yeah, giving them money is.
I remember one time I was at a meeting and I was going out to eat and I came across this fellow who was begging for money and for food. And I said, well, come with me and I'll buy you a meal. And so I bought him a meal, and about halfway through that, he asked for a box. He said he wanted to take the rest of it back to his friends who were hungry.
Mm-hmm.
We went to lunch one Sunday after church. And when we left the restaurant, I had half of a sandwich left. And there was a guy sitting at the entrance of the place, and he was begging. And I just opened my car window as we pulled up next to him. I said, I have a half of a sandwich that I'm eating on. Would you like to have it? Because he said, his sign said he was hungry. And he says, absolutely. And he jumped up and came over and took it. And he was very, very thankful, even though it was my leftovers. He was tickled to death to get it.
I do think to answer what Karen was talking about, one of the best lessons I got as a younger person was when Jesus said, love your neighbors as yourself. The as yourself part, I think Brother Wood was talking about that too. As yourself part is just as important as love your neighbor. So sometimes when there's an imbalance, you have to be careful and take care of yourself also. And still loving them, but loving yourself at the same. It's okay as Christians to love yourself.
Caregivers need to remember self-care is also important.
Yeah.
Yep.
So on the flip side of generosity, there's greed. And this is kind of a warning about greed. So this talks about charging exorbitant interest to someone. And the Old Testament law prohibited charging interest to those in need. So that's kind of a warning there. And then this is kind of a good name, but also about generosity, or anyway, but better to be poor and above reproach than rich and crooked. Or what Karen was talking about, it seemed like Proverbs says, give without, just give. So the righteous give without sparing. Or in 31:20, the wise woman, the last chapter in the book, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hand to minister to those who are needy. So those are maxims about generosity. We're running out of time, but decisions lots to say about good decisions and making a decision and developing godly character. These seem like to be, sometimes we think we're right, but God knows what's in our heart. Integrity. And then sometimes what a person is in character will eventually come to light publicly. And this is about reputation. And a good name is more to be desired than great riches. Esteem is better than silver or gold. So treasure your character, your integrity, your reputation is don't.
I think that's good advice. I mean, the most valuable thing to have is the freedom. Take that with you.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier, it's helpful if you can find friends who give you good advice. You need to listen to them and accept their instructions. Sometimes they might not give you what you want to hear. Righteousness. I thought this made me think of what we had talked about. The Gnostics begins with searching because they're kind of like that too. But anyway, so think of wisdom as hidden treasure and search for it. And righteousness and justice are kind of inseparable, according to Proverbs. To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. That makes us think of, was it in Micah? What does the Lord require? But walk humbly, do justice. I'm blanking. Third one is be merciful, I think. And then King Lemuel is challenged to rule righteously, to speak up for the powerless.
I remember back in high school, some of the girls in my class were putting another classmate down, and I kind of, spoke up to defend her. And one of them turned to me and says, "What do you think you are, an angel?"
Well,
no, I just think you guys are being too tough.
People accuse being goody two shoes. Okay. Whoops. So, do you have a favorite proverb? I've got. These are just 14 that are familiar.
I do. I've always liked Proverbs 31. Especially about the wise woman or the righteous woman and all she does for her family and her community.
So you might recognize one of these as your favorite, or maybe you got another one. Jim?
Okay.
Some of them we know as, and a lot of us probably have heard these in the King James Version. So there's an NIV version and a King James Version. I take those. So did any of these find their place as one of your favorites, or do you have something else?
31:10.
I like that one you've got is Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it.
Some of these we've already talked about, the unreliable friends and the brother. This is kind of one of the points and he made it in the video. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So that's gentle answer. We talked about that. But the short version is pride goeth before a fall. And this is a little bit worded a little differently, but kind of. I like 15. That's
Which one?
15:1 for a soft answer. Well, thanks for all the participation.